In the Samburu National Reserve in northern Kenya, a researcher hides a loudspeaker in the scrub and waits. A family of wild elephants is grazing nearby. He plays a recording of a rumble, taken from another elephant in their herd. Most of the animals barely lift an ear. But one female, a matriarch the researchers had named Donatella, stops. Her head comes up. She turns toward the speaker, walks straight to it, and calls back. 8 times. Then they play a different recording, made by the same elephant on the same day in the same place. Donatella ignores it completely. The difference between the two sounds was not who was speaking, it was who was being spoken to. The first recording had her name in it. In June of 2024, a team from Colorado State University, Save the Elephants and Elephant Voices, published that result in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution, and it quietly moved a line that we had drawn around ourselves. Dolphins and parrots do something that looks like naming, but they do it by imitation, by copying the signature sound the other animal already makes. Elephants do not. Elephants appear to use arbitrary labels, sounds that have nothing to do with the noises the receiver makes. That is exactly what a human name is. As one of the study's authors put it, we thought this was unique to people. So today, 100 facts about the animal that may have invented names before we did. And I promise you this is not the video you are expecting, because almost everything the internet has told you about elephants is either wrong, exaggerated, or hiding something far stranger underneath. If a channel that checks the research before it talks sounds useful to you, the subscribe button is right there. Let's start with the voice. Fact 1. Elephants address each other with individually specific name-like calls. Machine learning could predict which elephant a call was aimed at, using only the acoustic structure of the sound. Fact 2. The study analyzed recordings gathered at Samburu and Amboseli in Kenya over an astonishing span of time, from 1986 to 2022. 36 years of listening went into that one conclusion. Fact 3. From those recordings, the team identified 469 distinct calls, involving 101 elephants making a call and 117 receiving one. Fact 4. The crucial detail is the absence of imitation. A dolphin addresses another dolphin by copying that dolphin's signature whistle. A bit like calling someone by mimicking their voice. Elephants do not copy. The label appears to be arbitrary, and arbitrary labeling is the thing that makes human language so powerful. Fact 5. When researchers played calls back in the field, elephants responded to the ones addressed to them by calling back or walking to the speaker, and gave much weaker reactions to calls meant for someone else. They can tell a call was for them, stripped of all context. Fact 6. Elephants do not use names in every call. The analysis suggested names appear most often over long distances, and from adults to calves, which is precisely when a name is useful and precisely how humans use them. Fact 7. There is a hint of something even stranger in the data. Different elephants did not always seem to use the identical name for the same individual, which raises the possibility of nicknames, variations on a label, the way Elizabeth becomes Liz or Ellie. Fact 8. Most elephant communication happens below the floor of your hearing. Their rumbles descend into infrasound, down to around 14 Hz and lower, beneath the roughly 20 Hz limit of the human ear, which is why generations of observers stood beside elephants that were talking constantly and heard almost nothing. We were not in the room. We were simply deaf to it. Fact 9. Those low frequencies are a deliberate engineering choice by evolution. Low sound bends around obstacles and travels much further than high sound, so an elephant rumble can carry for kilometers across the savanna. Fact 10. Elephants exploit the weather to talk. Under the right atmospheric conditions, typically in the cool, still hours after sunset, their calls carry dramatically further, and researchers have found elephants are more vocally active in exactly those windows. Fact 11. Part of the message travels through the ground rather than the air. Elephant rumbles generate seismic waves in the earth, and work led by Caitlin O'Connell Rodwell showed elephants can detect these vibrations and respond to them. Fact 12. They listen with their bodies. Elephants have pressure-sensitive receptors in their feet and trunk tips, and they can pick up ground-borne vibration through bone conduction, essentially routing sound from foot to skull. Fact 13. You can watch them do it. An elephant listening seismically will freeze, lean forward, and sometimes lift one foot off the ground, pressing the others down harder to sharpen the signal. Fact 14. That gives them a kind of long-range early warning system. There is evidence elephants can detect distant events through the ground, and there are accounts of herds moving to high ground before humans registered anything was wrong. Fact 15. Elephants are vocal learners, a rare and demanding ability. It means they can hear a new sound and reproduce it, rather than being locked into the calls they were born with. Most mammals cannot do this at all. Your dog will never learn a new bark. The club of vocal learners is small and strange, containing songbirds, parrots, dolphins, whales, bats, seals, and us. And its membership is thought to be a prerequisite for anything resembling language. Fact 16. The proof is almost comic. A captive Asian elephant called Koshik in South Korea learned to imitate human speech, producing recognizable Korean words by putting his trunk in his mouth to modify the sound. He was, essentially, whistling with a boneless arm. Fact 17. Another elephant, Batir, in a zoo in Kazakhstan, was reported decades earlier to mimic phrases. And an African elephant named Malaika, living near a highway in Kenya, learned to imitate the sound of passing trucks. Fact 18. Elephants have an enormous vocal range, from those subsonic rumbles up to the trumpet, and researchers cataloging their communication have documented a wide repertoire of distinct call types with different social functions. Fact 19. They also read us. Studies have found African elephants can distinguish human groups by voice, reacting more defensively to the language of communities that historically hunted them than to the language of those that did not. Fact 20. And they sort us by age and sex from voice alone. Elephants showed stronger defensive responses to the voices of adult men from a hunting community than to those of women or boys, which is a remarkably fine-grained threat assessment to make from a sound. Fact 21. Elephants live in a society run by memory, and the memory belongs to the matriarch. Herds are led by the oldest female, and her knowledge of water, of routes, of danger, is the group's survival library. Fact 22. Research at Amboseli, led by Karen McComb, found that families led by older matriarchs were better at assessing predator threat, reacting appropriately to lion roars, and specifically to the roars of male lions, which are far more dangerous to an elephant calf. Groups with younger matriarchs were measurably worse at telling the difference, and their calves paid for it. Fact 23. This turns poaching into something worse than killing. Shoot the oldest elephant, and you do not merely remove one animal, you delete the library. The herd loses decades of accumulated knowledge in a single afternoon. Fact 24. Elephant families are built of females, mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, staying together for life, with young males leaving in adolescence. Fact 25. They practice real cooperative parenting. Younger females act as allomothers, helping to raise and guard calves that are not their own, and getting practice for their own future motherhood. Fact 26. Elephant pregnancy is the longest of any land mammal, around 22 months. A calf spends nearly 2 years being built before it takes a breath. Fact 27. A newborn weighs around 100 kilograms and can stand within hours, because a calf that cannot walk cannot follow the herd, and a calf that cannot follow the herd is dead. Fact 28. Calves have to learn how to use the trunk, and they are visibly, hilariously bad at it. For months they trip over it, swing it uselessly, and often drink with their mouths directly instead. That thing is not instinct, it is a skill. Fact 29. Elephant society is fission fusion, splitting and merging depending on food and water, so an individual holds a mental map not only of the landscape but of who is currently where. Fact 30. They keep track of an enormous social network. Experiments where researchers presented elephants with urine samples showed they could track the locations of many family members at once by scent, mentally keeping tabs on absent individuals. Fact 31. Adult males live a life almost nobody pictures. They leave the family, and rather than being loners, they form loose bull societies where older males play a policing role over younger ones. Fact 32. This produced one of conservation's hardest lessons. In South Africa, young orphan bulls relocated without any adult males became violent and began killing rhinos. When mature bulls were introduced, the killing stopped. The teenagers had needed adults. Fact 33. Bulls periodically enter must, a hormonal state where testosterone can spike to many times normal levels, making them aggressive and unpredictable. It is not a mood, it is a physiological event. Fact 34. Elephants greet each other with elaborate ceremony after separation, rumbling, trumpeting, spinning, urinating, and entwining trunks, in displays whose intensity scales with how close the two animals are and how long they were apart. Fact 35. Recent research has catalogued elephant greetings as deliberate, multi-channel signals, combining specific gestures and sounds, and found they tailor the signal depending on whether the other elephant is looking at them. Fact 36. That last detail matters enormously. Adjusting your gesture based on whether your audience can see you means you understand that the other has a point of view that differs from your own. Fact 37. The elephant brain is the largest of any land animal, weighing somewhere in the region of 5 kilograms, roughly 4 times a human brain. Fact 38. But size is not the interesting part. The elephant cerebellum contains an astonishing number of neurons, more than 3 times the neuron count of the entire human brain, which researchers link to controlling that impossibly complex trunk. Fact 39. The elephant's temporal lobe, the region tied to memory in humans, is proportionally large and unusually convoluted. The hardware for the memory they are famous for is visible in the anatomy. Fact 40. In 2006, Joshua Plotnick, Franz de Waal, and Diana Rees put a 2.5-meter mirror in an enclosure with 3 Asian elephants at the Bronx Zoo and published the results in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Fact 41. All 3 inspected the mirror and showed self-directed behavior, and one, an elephant named Happy, passed the formal mark test, repeatedly touching a visible mark on her own head that she could only see in the reflection, while ignoring an invisible control mark. Fact 42. Being honest about that result matters. Only one of the 3 passed. But even in chimpanzees, only about half of tested individuals pass, so a single clear pass in a species this hard to test was genuinely strong evidence, and it put elephants in a club with humans, apes, dolphins, and magpies. Fact 43. Elephants use tools with intent. They break branches to swat flies, and crucially, they modify them first, trimming a branch down to a workable size before using it, which is the difference between picking something up and making something. They will also drop rocks or logs onto electric fences to short them out. Fact 44. In a famous experiment, an elephant named Kandula solved a problem researchers thought was beyond him by dragging a large block underneath suspended fruit and standing on it, an insight-style solution rather than trial and error. Fact 45. In a cooperation test, pairs of elephants had to pull 2 ends of a single rope simultaneously to drag a table of food into reach. They learned to wait for their partner. One even worked out that she could simply stand on her end of the rope and let the other elephant do the pulling. Fact 46. Elephants understand pointing. In a study of captive African elephants, they spontaneously interpreted human pointing gestures to find hidden food, something even our closest ape relatives struggle with, and something dogs took thousands of years of domestication to learn. Fact 47. Elephants appear to comfort each other. Research on Asian elephants found that when one animal was distressed, Others approached, touched it with their trunks, and vocalized, a pattern consistent with consolation, which is rare outside great apes, dogs, and corvids. Fact 48. And then there is the death. Elephants react to elephant remains in a way they react to nothing else. Studies at Amboseli found they showed distinct, prolonged interest in elephant skulls and ivory over the bones of other species, touching them repeatedly with trunk and feet. Fact 49. They will stand over a dying or dead companion for hours, sometimes days. There are documented cases of elephants attempting to lift a dying individual, covering bodies with soil and vegetation, and returning to a site long afterward. Fact 50. Be careful how far you take that, though. Scientists are cautious about the word grief because we cannot ask an elephant what it feels. What the data supports is that elephants have a specific, persistent, and highly unusual response to their own dead, unlike anything they direct at other animals. What that response feels like from the inside is a question we cannot yet answer. Fact 51. Now the trunk. And let's begin by killing the most repeated elephant fact on the internet. You have heard the trunk contains 40,000 muscles. It does not. Fact 52. The trunk contains roughly 17 actual muscles. What it has tens of thousands of are muscle fascicles, the bundles of fibers those muscles are built from. And modern estimates put that number somewhere around 90,000 to 150,000. The famous figure comes from confusing a muscle with a bundle. Fact 53. That the truth is more impressive than the myth is the recurring theme of this animal. For comparison, the entire human body has roughly 650 muscles. The elephant packs 100,000-odd contractile bundles into a single limb. Fact 54. The trunk has no bones and no cartilage whatsoever. It is a muscular hydrostat, a structure that holds its own shape using nothing but incompressible muscle, the same principle as an octopus arm or your own tongue. Fact 55. That gives it something no skeleton can offer, effectively unlimited degrees of freedom. It can bend anywhere, in any direction, and stiffen on demand, which is why robotics labs have spent years trying and mostly failing to copy it. Fact 56. The tip is a precision instrument. African elephants have two finger-like projections there, Asian elephants have one, and with them an animal weighing several tons can pick up a single tortilla chip without breaking it. Fact 57. The same organ generates brutal force, capable of lifting hundreds of kilograms, and elephants have been recorded moving loads in the region of 300 kilograms with the trunk alone. Fact 58. It is also a suction pump. Elephants can draw water into the trunk, and contrary to what many people assume, they do not swallow it there. It is a straw and a hose, not a throat. They squirt it into the mouth. Fact 59. And the suction is more powerful than it looks. Research at Georgia Tech found elephants can inhale at speeds of over 480 kilometers an hour, faster than a human sneeze, and can even dilate their nostrils to increase capacity. Fact 60. That study revealed something remarkable. When picking up delicate food, an elephant will use suction rather than grip, hoovering up items too fragile to grasp, and it can vacuum up food both in air and underwater. Fact 61. The trunk is above all a nose, and the elephant's sense of smell may be the best ever measured in a land animal. Analysis of the African elephant genome found close to 2,000 functional olfactory receptor genes, the largest number identified in any species examined, roughly 5 times the human count. Fact 62. They put that nose to extraordinary use. Trained elephants have distinguished TNT from other substances, and in one study elephants could tell the difference between 2 Kenyan ethnic groups by the smell of their clothing alone. Fact 63. Elephants can also smell water at great distance and appear to detect quantity by scent, in tests choosing the larger of two hidden food amounts using nothing but their nose. Fact 64. The trunk doubles as a snorkel, which is why elephants can swim in deep water for long distances with the body fully submerged and the trunk tip raised. They are strong swimmers, and there is evidence of elephants crossing significant stretches of water. Fact 65. Elephants also breathe through it in a way no other mammal does. They have no pleural cavity in the usual sense, the lungs being attached directly to the chest wall by connective tissue, an adaptation thought to relate to the pressure of snorkel breathing while submerged. Fact 66. Now the ears, which are not for hearing so much as for cooling.
An African elephant's ears are laced with a dense network of blood vessels, and by flapping them the animal cools blood and circulates it back into the body, functioning as an enormous radiator. Fact 67. The size difference between African and Asian elephants tracks the climate exactly. African elephants, in hotter, more open habitat, have far larger ears. Asian elephants, in shadier forest, have smaller ones. Fact 68. And in a coincidence too neat to be real, the African elephant's ear is often said to be shaped rather like the continent of Africa. It is a coincidence, but it is a genuinely useful way to remember which is which. Fact 69. Elephants have no sweat glands to speak of, which is why the ears, the skin wrinkles, and mud are not luxuries but survival equipment. Fact 70. Those wrinkles are functional engineering. The cracks and folds of elephant skin trap water and mud, and research has shown this dramatically increases how long moisture is retained, keeping the animal cooler for far longer than smooth skin would. Fact 71. Studies of African elephant skin found the wrinkles form through a physical process of bending and fracture in the outer layer as the skin grows. And the elephant's skin actively produces those channels rather than merely wearing into them. Fact 72. Elephant feet are their own marvel. The animal effectively walks on tiptoe, with the heel supported by a thick, fatty, shock-absorbing pad that spreads the load and lets a multi-ton animal move almost silently. Fact 73. That pad is also part of the listening system, transmitting ground vibration up through the bones of the leg and into the body. Fact 74. And here is a real limit. Elephants cannot jump. Not badly, not rarely at all. Their skeletal structure and mass mean all 4 feet never leave the ground simultaneously. They are also the only mammal of their size for which this is strictly true. Fact 75. They cannot gallop or trot either, in the normal sense. At speed, elephants perform an odd gait sometimes described as a running walk, where the front legs and back legs appear to be doing different things at once. Fact 76. Tusks are not horns. They are teeth, specifically enormously elongated upper incisors, and they grow continuously through life. Like your teeth, they contain nerves, which means an elephant's tusk can hurt. Fact 77. Elephants are handed. Individuals favor one tusk over the other, and the preferred one, the master tusk, wears down visibly shorter and blunter from constant use. Fact 78. The molars are the strangest thing in the entire animal, and they decide when it dies. An elephant does not lose baby teeth and get adults. It runs a conveyor belt. New molars form at the back of the jaw and slowly travel forward, pushing the worn ones out at the front. Fact 79. An elephant goes through 6 sets of molars in a lifetime. When the 6th and final set wears out, usually somewhere around 60 to 70 years old, there is no 7th. The animal can no longer grind its food, and it starves. Fact 80. So an elephant's natural lifespan is not really set by its heart or its organs. It is set by its teeth. This is also why old elephants gather in swampy areas with soft vegetation, and it is where the myth of the elephant graveyard comes from. There is no graveyard. There are old animals with worn teeth seeking food they can still chew, dying near water, and leaving their bones in the same places. Fact 81.
That appetite is relentless. An elephant may spend 12 to 18 hours a day feeding and consume in the region of 150 kilograms of vegetation daily. Fact 82. And they are inefficient by design, digesting only a fraction of what they eat. That inefficiency is a gift to the ecosystem, because it means the seeds inside come out intact. Fact 83. Elephants are among the greatest seed dispersers on Earth, carrying seeds tens of kilometers before depositing them in a pile of fertilizer. Some tree species depend on elephants so heavily that their seeds germinate best after passing through one, and researchers studying forest elephants have found that losing them measurably reduces the trees a forest can regenerate. Kill the elephants, and decades later, the forest itself thins out. Fact 84. They are landscape engineers. Elephants knock down trees and strip bark, and in doing so keep savanna from closing into thicket, maintaining the open grassland that countless other species need. Remove elephants, and the landscape itself changes shape. Fact 85. They dig wells. In drought, elephants excavate riverbeds with tusks, trunk, and feet to reach water below the surface, and those holes are then used by other animals that could never have dug them. The elephant is a water utility for the whole ecosystem. Fact 86. Elephants sleep astonishingly little. A study that fitted wild African elephant matriarchs with activity trackers found they slept around 2 hours a day, the least of any mammal measured, and sometimes went nearly 2 days without sleeping at all. Fact 87. They often sleep standing up, and only lie down for the deepest sleep, which they cannot do for long, because their own body weight begins to damage their organs. Fact 88. Now to the thing that should not be possible. Every cell division carries a small chance of cancer. An elephant has vastly more cells than a human, and lives about as long. It should be riddled with tumors. It is not. Cancer mortality in elephants is strikingly low, estimated at under 5%, against something in the region of 11 to 25% in humans. An animal roughly 100 times our mass dies of cancer several times less often than we do. Fact 89. The cancer epidemiologist Richard Peto pointed this out in the 1970s, noting that large, long-lived animals ought to be at enormous statistical cancer risk, and observably are not. It is called Peto's paradox, and the elephant is its poster child. Fact 90. In 2015, a team led by Joshua Schiffman and Carlo Maili published the first big piece of the answer in JAMA, and a group led by Vincent Lynch reached similar findings independently. Humans carry one copy of the master tumor-suppressing gene TP53. Elephants carry about 20. Fact 91. TP53 is the cell's quality inspector. When it detects DNA damage too severe to repair, it orders the cell to destroy itself. Humans born with a broken copy develop Li-Fraumeni syndrome, with a lifetime cancer risk approaching 100%. That is how much a single gene matters. The elephant has 20. Fact 92. And the extra copies are not decorative. When researchers exposed elephant cells to radiation, they self-destructed far more readily than human cells did. The elephant's answer to cancer is ruthless. It does not try to fix a damaged cell. It kills it immediately. Fact 93. The genetics get better. In 2018, Vincent Lynch's team published in Cell Reports that elephants carry extra copies of a gene called LIF, mostly dead pseudogenes, except for one. LIF6 happened to land beside a genetic on switch that TP53 can operate. Fact 94. So a gene that had been dead for millions of years was reanimated. Researchers call it a zombie gene. When TP53 detects damage, it wakes LIF6, and LIF6 travels to the cell's mitochondria and blows it up from the inside. Fact 95. Both changes appear in the fossil record of the genome exactly when elephant ancestors were evolving to giant size. The proboscideans did not get big and then get lucky. They evolved the cancer defense and the size together. because one was the price of the other. Fact 96. This is why the elephant now sits inside human cancer research. As Schiffman put it, this took 59 million years of evolution, which in his view amounts to 59 million years of research and development. We are reading the results. Fact 97. And here is the fact that should end any argument about whether we affect evolution. In Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique, poaching during the Civil War from 1977 to 1992 slaughtered around 90% of the elephants. Normally, over 90% of female African elephants have tusks. In Gorongosa, roughly half the surviving females had none. Fact 98. In 2021, Shane Campbell-Staton and colleagues published the explanation in Science. Tusklessness is tied to a dominant mutation on the X chromosome, implicating genes involved in tooth development.
Females with it survived because they carried no ivory worth killing them for and passed it on. Fact 99. But the mutation has a horrifying catch. It appears to be lethal in males. A male with no second X to fall back on seems to die before birth. So tuskless mothers produce roughly twice as many daughters as sons. We did not just change what elephants look like. We wrote a lethal gene into their population and made it common, in 15 years, using rifles. And the one piece of good news is that as poaching in Gorongosa was brought under control, the proportion of tuskless calves began to fall again. Fact 100. So consider what the last hour has actually described. An animal that calls its family by name, that hears with its feet, smells 5 times better than a bloodhound, controls 100,000 muscle bundles in a boneless limb, has beaten a disease we are still losing to, and stands over its dead for days for reasons we cannot yet explain.
And the thing we chose to want from it was its teeth. Somewhere in Kenya right now, a rumble too low for you to hear is crossing several kilometers of dry ground, carrying a name. It has probably been doing that for longer than our species has had language. We only found out 2 years ago, because for all our instruments and all our confidence, we had not thought to listen properly. Which leaves me with a question I would like you to actually answer. If we miss something this enormous, in the most studied large mammal on the planet, right up until 2024, what else are we currently walking past? Tell me what you think we have wrong, about elephants or anything else, because that is the good part of the comments. And if you want to be here when the next thing gets found, you know what to do with the button. There is one more of these coming, about an animal you are also completely sure that you already understand.